What's going on, everybody? My name is Chris Pombonyo, or Mr. Pombonyo. I am a third grade teacher and ELA instructional coach in Orlando, Florida, and I am so excited to be with you today for another live ELA lesson. It's been about 2 weeks since I've been on here, but I'm so excited to be back. You might remember me from CC Love Science lesson, or we did the crayon lesson with the man who created Crayola. So I'm so excited to share one of my favorite books with you today, and it's called Thank You, Omu. And I love this book so much. It has a great lesson, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things with it. So welcome everyone just joining us. Let me know in the comments if you're a teacher, if you're a student. Let me know who's watching. Let me see your names. I see Michigan. I see Arizona. I see 5th grade. Awesome. Welcome. So like I said, the book we're going to be reading today is Thank You, Omu. Now, if you look at the cover of this book, it's got some fancy awards, and I love some books with some fancy awards. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about those awards before we get started, because I think that's really important, because when a book has an award on the cover, that means that it's gone above and beyond other picture books to get that award. So I really want to take time and encourage everyone to take time when you're looking at a book to notice those awards and wonder, what do those mean? Hi, Kylie. I see you live in Kansas City, 2nd grade. Awesome. Ashley, 1st grade. Welcome. So I'm going to talk about these awards really quick before we get into some vocabulary for the book. So like I said, the name of this book is Thank You, Omu. And the author and illustrator is Oge Mora right there. Now, this has double the award. So this, it must be really special and have something really cool going on. So the first award is the Caldecott Honor Award. And you can see that right there. You might have seen it before. It looks silver right there. And that's given for books that have out-of-this-world pictures. So that's for the illustrator, that they have pictures that are just like no other. So that's an award given to picture books that have an illustrator that illustrated pictures that are absolutely beautiful and depict the story really well. So that's really special for an illustrator, because they take time to bring the words to life through pictures. So getting that award means a lot to illustrators. And I'll just give you a little hint. A little sneak peek. The illustrations in this book are, I don't think beautiful would be a good enough word to describe them. They are incredible. They are amazing. So you're going to want to take a close look at the pictures of this book, because you know it was awarded that. The second award right here, and if you can see it right here, is the Coretta Scott King Award. In Instagram, I'll try to show you there. And that award is given to African-American authors and illustrators that really depict the African-American culture like no other. So that's given to African-American illustrators and authors that really bring the story to life and depict their culture. So that is really special to those authors and illustrators, and something that both the awards, any author or illustrator would be super proud of. So you know that this is going to be a good book, and that the pictures are going to be out of this world, because it has not one, but 2 really important and really special awards. Let me know in the comments what you're most excited for this book. Look at the pictures. What does that mean to you to have that special book, right? So I'm going to put this down for a second as we get into our lesson. So, like I said, I'm a 3rd grade teacher. So this lesson is going to be for kindergarten through 5th grade. And you're going to kind of adapt as we go, but we're going to have some fun along with it too. So the name of the story, like I said, is Thank You, Omu. And I bet you're wondering, who is Omu, right? Who is that? And you're going to meet Omu in just a little bit. It's absolutely amazing. You're going to fall in love with Omu through this story. But before we get started with any story, we need to have a focus, right? We need to make sure that we are all on the same page and we're focused. So the skill that we're going to be working on today is lesson learned and theme. Depending on what grade you're in, you might have heard some of those before, but we're going to talk about those. So within this story, at the end of every fiction story, the main idea of a fiction story is what I like to tell my students is the lesson learned. You might also refer to this as central message. Sometimes in folktales, you call this the moral. They're all very similar, but the main idea of a fiction text is the lesson learned. And this is the lesson that the author wants you as the reader to take away. So this has nothing to do with the characters. It has everything to do with the lesson that after you read this story, the author wants you as the reader to take away and be able to apply it to your own life. Now, you might be thinking, well, if it's not about the characters, how can we figure out the lesson learned? And that's an amazing question. How we do that is we track what the characters are doing, what they're saying, what they're thinking, any changes the characters go through, and we track that in our heads as we're reading, as good readers do. We're tracking all these things, the problem of the story, the solution, to come up with, well, what is the lesson that the author wants us to learn after reading this book? So the characters might learn a lesson too, but there's a bigger lesson learned or central message that the author wants us as the reader to take away and be able to apply to our own life. And this story has such a great message as well. The theme of the story is very similar, and that kind of puts it all together in an overarching umbrella. So our lesson learned is a lesson that we can apply to our life, and the theme takes it a step further and puts a one word, a phrase, or a short kind of ties it all together really nice on this is what it's all about. So if you were looking for books on friendship, there could be themes about friendship, or you can be books about honesty, or there can be books about kindness and being kind. And they're very, very similar. They're related. They're in the same family, right? So the lesson learned based on what the character does, the problem, all those things helps you figure out the lesson learned, and then you can put it together and say the theme of the story is, and you move on from there. So we're going to talk about that as we're reading, and at the end, we're going to put it all together to say, why did the author write this book, and what can it teach us as readers? So, if I say this to my students, I say, sound good, you say, sounds great. So I want to hear you say that at home. Sound good? Oh, you can do better than that. Sound good? There we go. So we're going to move on to our vocabulary to kick off our book. So I have some vocabulary words for you now. These resources, parents, are also in, or teachers, are also in the link in the caption. So those will be in the link in the caption. So the first word we have in our book is stew. Everybody say stew. Oh, you can be louder than that. I said say stew. There we go. Stew is a mixture of meat and other food cooked slowly. If you've eaten stew before, let me know in the comments if you've had stew. You might have had beef stew. You might have had chicken stew. Stew is a mixture of meat and other food cooked slowly over time. And you might be making a lot of stew now with some leftovers that you have or things like that. So when I say stew, you're going to stir the pot just like you would be making stew. In the story, one of our characters is making stew. So you can see that. That's really important to our story. So stew is a mixture of meat and other food cooked slowly. You can think of it kind of like soup, but a lot thicker, and it has a lot of other things in it, like chunks of meat, chunks of vegetables, potatoes, all things like that. Now, I don't know about you, but all that talk of stew is making me hungry. Hungry, so that goes with our next word, and it's scrumptious. Everybody say scrumptious, and kiss your lips like this. Scrumptious. Guys, I need you to do better than that. I said scrumptious. There we go. And a chef might say, mwah, scrumptious, or your grandma or your grandpa or your mom or dad when they're cooking, and that means really tasty. So you're saying scrumptious. You might even do scrumptious and rub your belly, but I think of a chef saying scrumptious like that. So everybody do it one more time. Scrumptious, and that means really, really tasty. Party in your belly. Next word, here we go. Wafted, and this is a word that you might know from science. So when we say wafted, we're going to go like this. Wafted. Everybody do that in the air. Wafted. You might even take a deep breath and start smelling, because wafted means to move lightly through the air. So if your mom or your grandma or your dad or anyone is cooking in the kitchen, and you're in your room and you start smelling that delicious food that your mom or your grandma is making, that means the smell is wafting through the air. So if something wafted through the air, it's moving lightly all through the house. So you see this right here. If someone's cooking something yummy, it might slowly start going. My favorite is when my mom makes pancakes and the smell of it just wafts up to my bedroom, and I can smell it before I even wake up, and I know it's time for pancakes. So you're going to go like this. Wafted. And you're going to take a deep breath in and smell. Awesome. Wafted. Here we go. Two more. Next word. Vendor. Vendor. Everybody go like this. Vendor. The word vendor, you might have heard this before if you've been to an event, or maybe if you've been to a carnival or things like that. A vendor is a person who sells things, okay? So if I go like this, that means they're selling something to you. Just like this man is selling the vegetables right here. So vendor is a person who sells things. I like to think of Aladdin. Has anyone seen Aladdin? That is my favorite movie. And the marketplace has a ton of different vendors that are selling different things. So anyone who sells something is a vendor. There we go. Vendor. Anyone who sells something. So in my head, I think of the marketplace in Aladdin where everyone is selling different things. And the last word, and I wish this was on a different color paper, but it has nothing to do with the color, but it's very similar. Blue. Spelt exactly the same way. Blue. Have you heard of the word blue before? And I'm not talking about the color of my background here. The word blue. What do you think it means by this picture? And the definition is right there, I know. But if someone is blue or they're feeling very blue, they are very sad or unhappy. So I want you to go blue. Everybody do that together. 1, 2, 3. Blue. All right, I think you got it. So we have blue, which means sad or unhappy. We have a vendor, someone who sells something to other people. We have wafted. That's to move lightly through the air. Remember that. We have scrumptious. Something really, really tasty. And then we have stew. A mixture of meat and other things like vegetables, potatoes, whatever it might be. So those are vocabulary that we're going to listen to and pay attention for as we read our story. So like I said, our story is called Thank You, Omu. And we talked about the awards. If you're just tuning in, you can check out what the awards mean in the beginning. But it's super important we take note of that because the author and illustrator worked very, very hard on this book. And that is an accomplishment that I'm sure they are super proud of. So I'm going to take off the jacket because I move around a lot when I read. You can ask my students. And I love this cover underneath the jacket. It says, Thank You, Omu. And it kind of looks like someone wrote it with a crayon, right? So, we're going to start reading Thank You, Omu. Note to the reader. Omu is the Igbo term for queen. Amu. Everybody say Amu. Amu. There we go. And that means queen. On the corner of First Street and Long Street, on the very top floor, Amu was cooking a thick red stew in a big fat pot for a nice evening meal. She seasoned and stirred it and took a small taste. What a delicious stew, Amu said. Tonight's dinner will surely be the best that I ever had. And look at the pictures here. Do you see how the colors kind of fade? They get lighter to darker. And who do you think that is? That is Amu, and that means queen. With that, Amu put down her spoon and went to read a book before supper. As the thick red stew simmered on the stove, its scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until... knock. Someone was at the door. When Amu opened it, she saw... You see the smell wafting through the air. A little boy. Little boy, Amu explained. What brings you to my home? I was playing with my race car down the hall when I smelled the most delicious smell, the little boy replied. What is it? Thick red stew. Mmm, stew, he sighed. That sure sounds yummy. And you can see the smell is still wafting through the air. Amu thought for a moment. She was saving her stew for dinner, but she had made quite a bit. It would not hurt to share. That is so nice of her. Would you like some? The little boy nodded. And so, Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. Thank you, Amu, the little boy said, and went on his way. With that, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. As she read, her thick red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until... Knock, knock! Someone was at the door. When Amu opened the door, this time she saw... A police officer. Miss Police Officer, Amu explained, what brings you to my home? I was on duty down the street and I smelled the most delicious smell, Mrs. Police Officer replied. What is it? Thick red stew. Ah, stew, she said, and her mouth watered. What does that mean, her mouth watered? How do you think she's feeling? Yeah, she really wants that stew. It sounds delicious. That sounds mighty tasty. Amu thought for a moment. There was still enough to share. Would you like some? The police officer nodded. Once again, Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot on her nice evening meal. Thank you, Amu, the officer said, and went on her way. And so, for the second time, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. Sure enough, as she read, her thick red stew, scrumptious, there's that word, scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, down the street, around the block, until, again, someone was at Amu's door. This time, when she opened it, she saw a hot dog vendor. That means the man who sells hot dogs. There. Mr. Hot Dog Vendor, Amu exclaimed, what brings you to my home? I was selling my hot dogs down the block when I smelled the most delicious smell, Mr. Hot Dog Vendor replied. What is it? Thick red stew. Ooh, stew. The vendor licked his lips. That sounds quite delectable. What do you think that word means, delectable? It wasn't one of our vocabulary words, but scrumptious was, and he licked his lips. If you lick your lips, it means what do delectable means? Yeah, that's right, really tasty. So he really wants some too. Oh, look at him. The smell, it smells so good, I bet. So Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. Thank you, Amu, the hot dog vendor said, and he went on his way. Throughout the day, people from all across the neighborhood knocked on Amu's door. She fed a shop owner, a cab driver, a doctor, an actor, a lawyer, a dancer, a baker, an artist, a singer, an athlete, a bus driver, and a construction worker. Even the mayor stopped by. She is just feeding everyone her delicious stew. And each time they knocked, Amu shared. What does that say about Amu, that every time someone knocks, she shares? What does that say about her? Let me know in the comments. That is mighty kind. Soon, the sky darkened, the streetlights brightened, and it was finally time for dinner. But when Amu opened up her big fat pot of thick red stew for her nice evening meal, it was empty. Uh-oh. She had shared all of her stew. Amu sniffled. There goes the best dinner I ever had. Sorry and blue, remember that word blue, sad. She sat at her table with her empty pot. Until... Knock, 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 knock. Who could that be? Amu wondered. When she opened her door, she saw the little boy, the police officer, the hot dog vendor, the shop owner, the cab driver, the doctor, the actor, the lawyer, the dancer, the baker. Why, everyone she fed today was at her door. I'm sorry, everyone, Amu sighed. My thick red stew is all gone. I have nothing left to share. The little boy tugged at Amu's sleeve. Don't worry, Amu. We are not here to ask. We are here to give. The police officer carried in a fresh salad. The mayor entered with a roast chicken. The baker brought a collection of sweet goodies. Even the little boy presented Amu with something special in a shiny red envelope. Everyone is bringing something for Amu. Everyone who had knocked on Amu's door that day squeezed inside her tiny little apartment. and together they ate, danced, and celebrated. While Amu's big fat pot of thick red stew was empty, her heart was full of happiness and love. That dinner was the best dinner she ever had. And inside that red envelope was a note that said, "Thank you, Amu." I just love that story and the lesson that it teaches us. So let me know in the comments, what do you think the lesson learned of that story is? And of course, we have to support it with evidence. So on your resources, you have this sheet that you can do after this video is over. It says, "Thank you, Amu" on top. And it says the lesson learned, central message, 3 pieces of evidence, and then we're going to do the theme. So we can start this together right now. So "Thank you, Amu" was the name of our story. What is the lesson that you think the author wants us to learn? Let me know in the comments, what is the lesson the author wants us to learn? Now remember, this is not about Amu, right? Or any of the other characters. It's the lesson that we can take away and apply to our life based on Amu and the other characters. So, the lesson learned is, go ahead and put it in the comments if you know. Seeing some comments come through. There's a little bit of delay. So I'm going to tell you what I think it is, and you tell me if you agree. So the lesson learned is, I'm going to say, if you give to others, they will give to you. They will give to you. Now, I got that from looking at the characters' actions, what they did, and what I think the author wants me to take away from this story. So I need 3 pieces of evidence right here that support that. And you're going to do some of them on your own because I don't want to run out of time, but I want to do them together with you now. So once again, this resource is in the link and you can print it out. And I want you to think of events that happened in the story, things that the character said, things that the characters did, anything that they were thinking, and put that as your evidence for why that is your lesson learned. And if your lesson learned looks a little different than mine, that's okay, right? We can each take away a different lesson, and they all relate to the story. But my lesson learned of this story that I think the author wants me to know is, if you give to others, they will give to you. Now, how do I know that? Well, one of my pieces of evidence is that Amu gave her stew away to everyone. And I know on Instagram you can't see the board, but it's okay. You can do it on your own on the paper after. So Amu gave her stew away to everyone. What else is a piece of evidence that supports if you give to others? So that shows that Amu was given. At the end of the story, what happened? They all gave to Amu, right? All the neighbors, and I'm saying neighbors, they might be down the block. I don't know. I'm just guessing that they live very close. All the neighbors gave back to Amu, and I want to be specific. So here I say stew, so I can say examples, and I can say the police officer gave salad. I can say the boy gave a card. So first, she gave. Then all of the neighbors gave back to Amu. And ignore my sloppy handwriting on here as I am writing. But you can find the evidence that supports your lesson learned. Your lesson learned might be something a little different that you're going to have to support with your evidence of what the characters did. Now, after we have our central message or lesson learned, you can call it either of those, and we talked about earlier that that's really the main idea of a fiction text, is a lesson learned. Every single fiction text is going to have some sort of lesson that the author wants us to take away from what the characters did and apply to our own life. And that's really important. So I'm going to write that. Apply to life. They want you to apply that lesson to your life. That's why they wrote the book. So it's not necessarily about the characters, even though the characters might have learned something. It's about what you can take away to your own life. So every single fiction story you read is going to have that lesson learned that you can then apply to your life. And I love that. Now we have to put it all together, and then we go to theme. So if you're in 4th or 5th grade, you talk about theme. Now I don't have room on here. Can I just erase here, or I'll erase right here? We're going to revise here, okay? So we're going to talk about theme really quick before we go, because if you're in 4th or 5th or even 6th grade, you know a lot about theme, and theme sums it all together. So the theme of this story, if I had to put it all together to one word that says, what is this mostly about? What is this sums up all of this lesson learned, what the character is doing? I would say the theme would be gratitude. If you've heard that word before, that's being grateful, right? Being grateful. So all these people were very grateful that Amu gave to her. So they gave back to her. They were giving back. They were grateful. And that's what gratitude is all about. You might even say be kind if you were in 1st or 2nd grade. You might say that the theme was kindness. You might say that the theme is friendship, of everyone working together. The theme is what the author puts it all together and what that book fits with. Now, some things that you can do at home after this, because we have 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure that you head on over to get Class Fit on our page with Coach Wood. And if you haven't tuned into Class Fit this week with Coach Wood, you need to after this. It starts at 1:30, and he is absolutely hilarious. He'll get you up and moving. But some activities that you can do after this, the first one is you have little thank you notes right here. And I'll show Instagram too. Little thank you notes that you can write to someone just like the little boy wrote to Amu. So I want you to show that you're grateful and show gratitude and write a note to someone or 2 people or 3 people or 4 people that you can print out and say thank you. You write the person's name right here and you write them a note saying why you are grateful for them and thanking them, because that little boy, although he couldn't bring any food because he's just a little kid, right? He wrote that note, and that was so special to Amu, because how do I know it's so? The author kept bringing it up in the pictures, right? It was on the cover. The story ended like that, and she said it was the most special of all. So that is so important, to show you're grateful with just simple acts of kindness like a note. You also have an I'm grateful for list that I want you to write things that you are grateful for. You might do 1 per day. You might do 2 per day. But take time every day to show gratitude and say, what are you grateful for? Amu was grateful for delicious food, for her neighbors, her card, all those things. The neighbors and the little boy were grateful for Amu, right? So you can be grateful for all different things. It can be people, things in your life, your teachers, all these different things. And I want you to make sure that you take time to write what you are grateful for. If you want the resources, they're in the link. But right now, Class Fit is getting started. So I'm going to sign out. Guys, so much for tuning in for another live ELA lesson. As a reminder, these happen every day at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, right here on the Get Your Teach on Facebook page. If you want to catch any of the replays, you can check it out on our Facebook page. It's at Hope and Wade King /live. Bye, guys. See you next time.